Okay, so firstly, do you guys know the charts by heart for this position? Like Darkisu or Goldbat or KU? Because Dudorum told me he doesn't.
Like 99% probably
Yeah, I
not,
know it pretty
but
well.
Mm-hmm.
like 80 something, 89, I would say.
Okay,
Hi guys.
cool. Hey,
Still have all of them on like second monitor if I notice.
so what was your actual question about these charts, Dudorum? Like, what do you want to elaborate over?
Nothing. I was just wondering if they know it because I was looking about the big blind versus small blind against the regs, and I tried to understand how the range is constructed, and I also noticed that they added some bluffs
Yeah.
and also balanced with values, because I was not expecting that much the regs at 60s, and I got check shoved a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess I can talk a bit about preflop firstly. Okay, well these charts, like over here, you're doing mostly value, yeah, and you're not ISOing many bluffs at all, just a few selected ones, just a few selected combos, and that's fine to not have too many bluffs against regs because, as you know, they tend not to limp fold and they tend to limp raise quite a bunch if they do limp. So following these type of charts work well against them, but we can talk about some adjustments. And firstly, we'll start by talking also about against fishes. Let's bring the charts here actually. So against fishes, basically, like ISO 100% of your range, because firstly they fold preflop enough, but secondly, they actually don't fold too much preflop. Like small blind versus big blind, the limp fold is only around 30%. But if you look at post flop, the folding to C bets and ISO pots like half the time, which is why we should be ISOing basically almost our entire range, because post flop we have tons of fold equity. And if we don't have the fold equity on the flop, we have it on the turn and the river as well. So we can just triple barrel a ton. So that should be our general strategy when we ISO. We bet and barrel, basically, against fishes. And yeah, we're going to see some of that today for sure. Against regs, things can change obviously. As a default, you can follow the charts. That's cool. If you don't know who the reg is, but you need to know when to lower the ISO percentage in general, both against fishes and regs. And what's going to matter will be the limp fold statistic a lot, and limp raise. So these are the statistics you want to be looking at, and also of course post-flop stats, you also want to be checking them out. But pre-flop, if they're limp folding a lot, like over 40%, then you can ISO a lot. But if they're not limp folding much, like some people have less than 30% limp fold, and those people, you shouldn't be ISO bluffing the bottom of the range for sure. And you shouldn't be ISOing too much in general. However, if they're not limp raising much, you can start ISOing more top range. And let me actually just bring up some GTO charts. I don't know if you have these. Do you have these GTO charts in your...
No, we don't.
No.
Right, it might be only for hundreds, guys.
Probably.
But if you see at like, and it's only small blind versus big blind for now, but these are like how the charts, it's not exactly GTO obviously, but it's kind of GTO. And basically what this means is like we should always ISO value obviously, but for the bluffing range, we're again not ISOing too many of the weak trash hands. But these hands are like. It means you ISO sometimes, but sometimes you don't. And you can use it according to a randomizer, like ISO with 1/3 frequency, or you could also change a lot depending on their stats. So these are the type of hands you want to be ISOing in general. Because they work good as bluffs, they're not total trash, but they hit more flops. So they can hit a high card or high pair, which you can check back on the flop and go for 2 streets of value later or something. Or like their weak, trashy suited hands, which play well post-flop. So these are the kind of hands you want to ISO. And as a note, you want to ISO more suited hands when you're deep stacked and more off-suited hands when you're shallow stacked. So change the frequencies. At deeper stacks, you want to ISO more with suited cards, because if they are more playable, you can like bluff more multiple streets. Whereas these, you want to like basically one and done bluff, or hit a pair or something, basically. So that's why at lower stacks you ISO these hands more frequently than these. And notice we also have a non-all-in range with king, queen, and king, jack off, planning on folding, and that's because, like, sometimes you want to have some value that you can fold as well. Now, the thing is, you need to know how to adjust properly. If you see somebody is not limp folding a lot, then you shouldn't be ISOing too many of these hands. And then the question becomes, how do you choose which hands to ISO? Then it becomes dependent on their limp raise. So if they're limp raising a lot, then you probably don't even want to ISO most of these hands in general, because they're just going to limp raise. And so yeah, be careful of that. And if they limp raise a ton, then have a mostly value heavy range that you can call off. And if they limp raise a ton, you can widen your value range. You can include most, like ace X suited, 10-9 suited, more pairs, like go down to fives, and ISO a 7 off non-all in, just for value to catch the limp raise. You can widen that and instead just have a completely almost zero ISO bluff percentage and just do it for value, planning on calling the limp raises. Against low limp raise, what you can do is, but they still limp call a lot. So let's say the limp fold is like less than 30, but they don't limp raise either. It's like less than 10% or at least less than 20%. In that situation, like, there's nothing wrong with not ISOing bluffs in general, but bringing it to a more value heavy range in general. So just merge your top value range. So include more broadways and things, and just try to get value from them. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then, if let's say their limp raise is high, but they're also limp folding, so what that means is they don't limp call a lot. So they either limp raise or they limp call, or they limp fold. Sorry. Then you can do it with a polarized range. So you still do it with your value, but then you can include more trashy hands. Does that all make sense, kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's basically how you want to be looking at how to construct your ISOing ranges against regs and fishes. And the important thing is, against fishes, the standard definitely is just ISO 100%. It's going to be the best. And with that being said, I guess we can move on to some hands.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this, man.
Cool. Okay, so Tico Futaki is a reg, and so as a standard, I'm not ISOing this hand too much. And when he checks to me, like, basically, I have a range of hands that I'm gonna check and bet, and I usually like to bet with like king high sometimes, just to bet once and then check it down, because I don't want to like face a delay c-bet. And I'd mostly be betting with my nines and most of my threes, and I would also be like, my check back range would probably consist of like some jack highs or something that I plan on easily folding if he bets, and I can like maybe delay or improve in some way. Like I'd c-bet most of my top and bottom range in this case.
Do you check weak nines on this flop?
Yeah, like I'd be checking quite a few weak nines in this situation. Yeah, so that I could be able to catch probes exactly. Okay, well, I swing 250. One thing you might notice with my personal play, and this is something that basically only I do and not many others do, is that I ISO basically 100% of my range against fishes with 50 sizing. Now we should be using 60 against fishes, and that's the smart spin strategy, and that's what most of the people do use, including at like hundreds. Most of the people use 60 sizing. I just personally prefer 50. Like for me, the reason is I want them to keep calling pre-flop and just take the money post-flop where they fold more. And if we ISO to 60, they might fold a bit more pre-flop. And so that's my logic, and I just have a slightly different style.
Well, but if they call the same range, they will just win more if you ISO 3x like in charts. If the range doesn't change, if their calling range stays the same.
Yeah, that's true. But
So I'm not sure if that's the best approach actually.
What do you mean?
Exactly what I said, I mean.
No, but my approach is smart spin's approach.
Is it? Like we are raising 3x with
Hands
the
you ISO
bottom.
fold. Yeah.
Yeah. So we win more chips post flop with the c-bet, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. But they sometimes fold pre-flop.
Yeah, actually that makes sense. Okay.
I'm not sure what's best, and probably for a lot of people, and as a default, it's probably best to 3x. It just I've become very experienced with this, so I know how to play very well through these spots when I do 2.5x. Like I've developed my own sort of strategy and I know the different types of bet sizings I want to be using when I'm 2.5xing, whereas I'm not as experienced 3xing. So like, everyone has different levels of comfort and slightly different strategies, and it's developed over time with experience. So this is just something I've developed over time, basically. That is a bit different from smart spin strategy.
I have a question, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you raise 2.5 against regs also for bluff and for value?
No, against regs I 3x everything.
Uh-huh.
So against fishes I 2.5x everything because I want to get called pre-flop and then I want to c-bet and I just want to take the pot down. Against regs I swing much less in general, so I'm 3xing because my range will include all my value but a lot less bluffs, and so I want to keep balance sizings and get paid more when I have value.
Okay.
Here, this guy, I don't know. I just c-bet, but probably it's better to check. I'd rather check now. Maybe I just saw he's not folding to floats or something, and that's why I decided to bet. But yeah, usually we should just check. Okay, so here again I'll be ISOing at a certain percentage of the time. Usually it would be around like, let's say 30% of the time I might ISO this hand. But given he's limp folding a lot, he's got a high VPIP, like he looks super weak from this position. So I can increase my frequency maybe up to 40 or 50%. I still don't want to do it 100% of the time though, I'd say. Because again, we have to remember this guy is a good reg. He's one of the best smart spinners, and so even though these are his stats, like, it's probably not against me. It's against the population in general, and that's very important to remember. So just because his stats look like this from the HUD, it doesn't mean it will look like this in general. So that's why I can't be like ISOing this 100% of the time. Anyways, he calls, and I'm definitely c-betting to keep my range balanced, basically. And it's a low board. It's got some straight draws, so I can easily expect him to have some flush draws. I can easily expect him to have some straight draws. I can expect him to have a 5 or 6 from time to time, and high cards like king high is not folding, so I definitely want to bet. And when he check raises, it's just like a call. And he checks. I'm just gonna bet again. I definitely want to charge the draws, of which there's plenty. Plus, I'd probably be betting if I had an ace in general too. And just, yeah, that's cool.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have coaching yesterday, boxers, and can you go to flop? We are watch hands when very isolating and 3xing, 3x isolate, and size value here for bet. Is it 40 for bluff or 50 chips in 120?
Against a fish, I would bet at least 50, even 60 chips, because you want them to fold as many 2-overs as possible. So
Okay.
if they have like queen jack, you want them to fold, and if you bet 40, they're probably calling. So I'd bet at least 50. I think I'd even bet 60 against fishes.
And against regs for bluff.
I'd
Also-
keep balanced sizings against regs in general, because I'm taking a more balanced GTO approach against regs, and if they find out what you're doing, they can easily exploit it. And it doesn't matter if they don't fold much on the flop. You can bluff more on the turns if you think they fold. If you think they call more on the flop.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, this guy's a reg. At less than 16 BBs, I'm 2.5xing mostly. And he just folds. Oh, we're not seeing flop situations, but it's okay to explain pre-flop. Would you rather only see flop situations? Or we can go through everything?
We can go through everything.
Everything.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so again, I guess we can go back to the GTO charts a bit, and I can try and explain that. So, again, like, here we're 12 big blinds deep, so I'd be following something like this. I had 10-3. These are one of the combos I can occasionally be ISOing at some frequency, and definitely against him. He's got a wide VPIP, so definitely he's also c-betting a lot, so we want to look at post-flop stats also when deciding when to ISO. Like, if I check back, it won't be the best spot, so it's a good spot for me to use a bluff, especially when considering he's still limp folding quite a bunch to me. Also, if you want to know like some numbers, like here you see his VPIP is 73%, it's 82%. Like, if their VPIP is over 70%, for sure they are playing too wide, so you want to attack them, and they're going to have a weak range either in the limp or the min raise or both. So you want to find where it is and attack them. And you can also like 3-bet non-all-in basically with pretty similar hands to these. Like, you can 3-bet non-all-in with almost the same range you'd be ISOing. But you shouldn't. But also remember, you're playing in position, so you can also just call super wide and just play post flop against them. Like that's also super cool. You can also like raise C bets against this guy. You can float bet if he checks. So yeah, definitely lots of ways to play. We can also take a quick look at the new GTO small blind versus big blind. This is the strategy that includes no limps. So as I said, there's a strategy that includes limps, and there's a strategy that includes no limps. And this is the one with no limps. And this is the one that SmartSpin chose to give to its hundreds regs, because it's a lot simpler to remember. Like, if you know you don't need to limp at all, you don't need to remember limping range, and it's pretty simple to play. And again, this strategy is almost zero EV, basically. Yeah, so we're only 3xing at above 20, 16 to 20, it's 2.5 open, then it's a min raise. And again, no limps, and you're open shoving slightly wider, as you see. You're open shoving like king 5 suited at 16 to 20. Yeah, if you get to hundreds, you'll be getting these charts probably. And having a strategy like this against regs can be cool, because like if you just 3x and only 3x, then a lot of regs don't know how to react to that. Some of them, they overfold, some others they like 3-bet way too much. And you know, this strategy is basically balanced. So it's like close to zero EV against perfect GTO. So if that is the case, then like if anyone is making overfolding or over 3-betting, then it's easy. Then we auto profit basically. Of course, if you see other people playing differently, if you see people like doing something very exploitable, you can obviously add some limps. Like if you see that they fall to limp C bets a lot, then you can add a bunch of limps and everything. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's move on. Okay, so here Jumi limped. I like this spot to ISO shove, to be honest. Like, yeah, cool. Because he's just limp folding so much, and also his VPIP, again, it's high. Like, we should be attacking his limps quite a bit. Cool. And yeah, see, I just added that because of his stats.
Would you also 3-bet shove this hand here?
Probably not, because his VPIP is so low. I mean, his min raise, sorry. His min raise is so low.
It's 55 actually, if I see correctly.
Yeah, but at 10 big blinds.
Yeah.
With 10 big blinds deep.
Yeah, this number. Yeah, because you have it here. Right.
Yeah, if we were like deep stacked, if we were like 18 big blinds deep, I might 3-bet shove for sure. Yeah, that looks cool.
But actually on 20 BB deep, let's imagine he's limping or in raising, do you like get it in regardless of the action he takes?
Probably I'd rather shove, to be honest, because the thing is, when they min raise, we can exploit it by basically calling super mega wide. This would be the GTO charts against min raise. Like you don't need to 3-bet too wide, because like they're min raising such a wide range, and we should just outplay them post flop in general. Now, if they have super aggressive stats like bet, and not folding to floats, then you can 3-bet more if you don't want to play them post flop. But like in general, GTO just likes to play post flop, so I like to play post flop too quite a lot.
Yeah, so you would rather call versus a min raise on 20 BBs, right?
Yeah, I think again I'd rather call and then mostly jam some king X offsuit and 3-bet non all in a few, like maybe 10 to 20% of the time, with a similar range to what I'd ISO non all in. Okay, Shrat, this guy's reg in SmartSpin, and he's limping. It looks like he got a weak limp fold range, and also like he's limp folding. The thing is, he's not like c-betting too much, so definitely I could easily check this back, but I think a small frequency of the time I do want to be ISOing this hand, because I know that from time to time GTO does ISO this hand, for example. Yeah, this is perfect GTO, let's say, against perfect GTO, so it's kind of similar, as you see, to the GTO charts, but like, as you see, where is it? Yeah, it's not the exact frequencies. It's just showing something similar. This would be the exact frequencies, and so I am supposed to ISO Queen 10 off from time to time. And we can go through generally looking at GTO2 pre-flop, like ISOing a bunch of off-suited medium hands and suited trash hands the most. And some of the strong broadways too, it's ISOing for value, because most of the population is actually limp raising too much. Like, the population of regs is limp raising at too high of a frequency. If they were playing GTO, then it would be good to be ISOing most of these hands for value, because they'd be limp calling a lot, but they wouldn't be limp raising. But it's not good if they are limp raising too much, because we have to ISO fold these hands. So you don't want to ISO fold these hands. Here I could ISO this hand because Shrat is not limp raising. He might be limp folding or not, but he's not limp raising so far. And like 0 out of 8 limp raise. And so when someone is not limp raising, you can ISO wider for value with your off-suited hands. So that was the idea there. But let's look for the GTO again. And let's say we ISO 3x. Like, let's look at the limp raise stat. Again, it's very, very low. It's only doing it with some ace-x's, some of the weaker pairs, and like maybe king 8 suited from time to time. And so, yeah, it's not even limp raising suited aces. So, and it's the same at every stack depth. It's just not limp raising very wide. The limp raise should be less than 15% at every stack depth. So a lot of regs have over 20% limp raise. So that is way too high, basically, as I'm showing you. And that's why our charts in SmartSpin are a lot more like solid. They're not ISOing as often as GTO is with like these hands, because the population of regs just isn't playing very GTO. And so, yeah. At 20 BBs plus, you definitely can ISO most of your suited trash hands. Those are some of the best hands to ISO at 20 BBs plus. But as you get shallower stacked, you do it less and less, and then you move more towards off-suited hands. See, now you're ISOing much less suited trash, and then you're moving more towards off-suited hands for the same reasons I discussed earlier at the start of the video. I think we talked about that a bit. And if you look at the ISO percentage, it's like less than 40% at every stack depth. So, yeah. And again, note how GTO is ISOing more often than like this, because this would be like, if we ISO 1/3 of the time with each of these yellow hands, it would be like probably 30% or something. And GTO is doing it almost 40%. So yeah, you have to be very wary, but that's why it's very important to look at the statistics of the other players and understand how they construct their ranges and try to exploit that. So here I just saw he's not limp raising, so I can widen my ISO for value. Same situation. This is a hand I can definitely ISO. Like, against this type of player, I'm going to be ISOing slightly wider because, like, of his stats. weak limps, limping most of the range, limp folding 50%, not limp raising. So it's just easy to ISO wider. It doesn't mean I do it with these hands in white. I'd almost never do it with those, but when I have like one of these hands, I'm pretty comfortable ISOing. Okay, so this is a reg. We've got suited trash, a hand we definitely can ISO from time to time, but I chose not to. Probably a low randomizer, and just check back with my middle pair, planning on catching a probe. And when he barrels on the river, I don't mind, like, both folding and calling are fine, but I think I'd rather fold, because, like, he can definitely play a king that way, and, like, I don't have much info on his delays. So without too much info, I just want to play solid on the rivers. Okay, so fish, ISOing to 50, and I'm just betting half pot with my flush draw. He called, and now he's pot donking it. So I think obviously he's got a very strong range. He could definitely have a king, but my hand's just kind of too strong, and there's not so much money left in the pot, so he might still have some worse draws. So I called. I could have just shoved, probably save. It's probably the best to just jam, just to cut equity from weaker hands, so I'd rather see myself jam. Anyways, yeah, he did have a king, so that was interesting and very important to note. Like, once you see something like this, you need to note it down and make sure so that when you see him again in the future, you can, like, you know what he has in these situations. Here I didn't ISO. I should have. That was a mistake, but generally you should just ISO this. And when he checks, I'm just betting. Yeah, if a fish checks, you bet. That's the general plan. And just start with that. 3-5 off. It's one of the total bottom of the range hands that I'm not ISOing very often against regs. But here I hit a gut shot on the flop. He checks to me. Although he's not folding to floats, like, this is one of the best hands to bluff with. I have a 5, so it means I can represent like any 8, 9, like a 6 gives me the nuts, or like near nuts. I can barrel a lot on a 2 and some jacks and queens. So this is one of the best bluffing combos, basically. So I decided to just pot it, because I think that has the most fold equity. And also, like, if I had a 10 or even a 7 or 4, I might pot it on this flop, just for value, because it's a rather wet flop. And like, maybe with a 7 or 4 I pot it, planning on just checking on the turn and river to go to showdown, whereas with a 10 I plan on barreling. So I think most of my range here I'd be potting in general. So that's the plan, and as a bluff I like potting too. So this isn't in shots, I don't think. But I guess, oh, it is in shots. Okay, so maybe I'm just following the shots then. Yeah, but also, like, he's got 100% VPIP here. He's also got 100% VPIP here. He's limped like 5 out of 5 in total, it looks like. So even if it wasn't in shots, I'd be doing the same thing. Well played. Okay. This guy's a regular, and so his VPIP is 73, but it might change a bit. It might be a bit higher or lower because the sample's still not too big. I mean, it's 30 hands, but definitely could be bigger. And it looks like he's not limp folding too much. So probably I'd actually rather be not ISOing this hand too often. I did decide to ISO, and I even made it 2.5x. I don't like it too much. Like, I was maybe trying to change my dynamics with him, or I start to think he was a bit of a fish, but probably not the best. Anyways, mid pair here I like betting for value and to deny equity. We've got a pretty decent kicker. We don't block any of the flush draws or anything, so yeah, this looks totally cool. The 10 pairs, so actually usually I'd be checking back, but on this 10 I can easily go for another street of value. And right now, like, the most of his range is rather static to my sizing. Like, if he has a flush draw, he's not going to fold. If he has a 4, he's usually not folding. A 10 is obviously not folding. The only thing that I might fold with increasing sizings are like ace high, king high, maybe a deuce. But even those, it's like we either got it or we don't, so he's gonna call or fold in a lot of situations. But yeah, I like using a more similar 2/3 pot sizing around on the turn with most of my range, because like his range should be kind of static to my sizing. He check raises, and this is a spot where I think GTO would call a lot, but I don't think he's doing this as a bluff nearly enough, so I'm comfortable folding, because like I think he could play a 10 like that, and I don't see him playing much else than a 10 like that.
Don't you think so? That's like half of his range. Like gonna call to lower sizing. Like 4x we are blocking. Flash draw is a small part of his range, and Queen Jack, King Queen, King Jack, like those type of hands gonna fold versus this sizing versus lower. They could like call.
Yeah, but that's not really how I'm thinking. And also, like, I'm not sure if he's gonna call Queen Jack or King High if I bet smaller.
And are you also doing it with 10?
Yeah, yeah. Pretty much, I just bet with most of my range this sizing, because this guy is a reg, and so I'd keep like pretty balanced sizings. And like, I want to put him in tough spots, so if I'm putting him in tough spots, what that means is that he's going to be forced to make some mistakes. And like if he makes less mistakes than I do, then I win in the long run. So again, I'm
If
not.
he makes more, right?
Yeah. So my thinking is not right now towards this max exploit strategy, like bet small with value and don't like I'm not splitting my sizings, because if he finds out about that, then it's really exploitable. And it's really hard for him to play against me. Like, for example, he check raised here with a 10. He shouldn't be doing that too often, or if he is, he should be doing it with a bluff. And I know he has a 10. Like, I'm almost like 90% sure he has a 10 here, or more. And so, because I know that, I can fold this. If he was playing GTO, I'd have to call this, but I know he's not playing GTO. So the person who's playing closer to GTO wins, basically. And
Also, we still have a value bet thanks to our kicker, even with this sizing.
exactly,
had,
like
like-
this is still a value bet for sure.
Yeah, if we had a 4-3, we actually made a calculation of similar hand on our group coaching 2 weeks ago, maybe, and yeah, we still have a huge value bet here with this sizing. If we had a like 4-3, we could argue to go like 50 or 60 here, because
exactly.
otherwise he's folding too much. And we
Yeah,
are like,
probably with 4-3 you could either check or go for a smaller sizing.
yeah.
The thing is, when you use different sizings, it's really hard to balance. And like,
Yeah, I mean, if we wanted different sizing, obviously, then we could have a better hand to do it.
yeah, for sure. And also, like, when I'm betting with this sizing, like, I don't think the EV difference between this sizing or, like, smaller, like, 1/3 pot would be very different at all. The EV would probably be the same, because even if he does call slightly more with, like, king high or something, that's not, like, such a big part of his range. Like, he still has a ton of, like, flush draws and for worse fours and things that can call. And also, depending on the person, his range might be quite inelastic. Like, it might just call even with king high to this sizing. So it totally depends on the person too. So yeah, I think overall this is totally cool. Okay, this guy's I don't know if he's a reg or fish, but looks like a reg fish, but just ISOing. Yeah. And like, I use 60 there. Sometimes what I might do against fishes is, if I don't want to play a hand post-flop, such as this hand, such as the bottom of my range, such as, let's say, a lot of these hands in white, I might just ISO to 60 because I'm happy taking it down post-flop, and I don't necessarily care if they call. Yeah, sometimes I do it. So I can change sizing against fishes too. Here I'm just jamming. Apparently I should ISO none all in. But as a standard, I jam, especially against this player, because it just doesn't look like he's limp calling much anyway. So if he's got a hand that can limp call, I think he might be able to limp call against an all-in sizing too. So I think that's fine. Yeah, standard sizing against a random. And here we have a gut shot, but it's a wet board. So a lot of times I'm checking here, especially when there's a flush draw on the board. But I've got a gut shot, so that makes me more want to bet, so it's really close. I think I'm gonna bet like half the time. And I do this time. And the important thing on wet boards, bet half pot, make them fold overcards, make them fold like backdoors, stuff like that. So don't bet 40. Usually I'd be betting 40 into 100, but on wet boards, bet half pot, because like you get them to fold more of their overcards, more of their, let's say, I don't know, even 10-7 or something. Yep. Here, he hasn't limp folded once, but he's very passive. Post-flop, he's folding a ton. So here, when he donks 1 BB, I'm just folding because I have completely nothing, and he hasn't done this before, and he looks very passive post-flop. So I don't want to try and fold him off a 3 or queen, possibly. Okay, here he limp raised a really small sizing, so it's not the first time he did it, so I'm just doing it again. And okay, just try to realize equity. And I misread my hand. I thought that I had an open-ender, not a gut shot, I think I remember. So that's why I called. And okay. Flaco Rios is a reg, so I'm not ISOing too wide. Hit 2 pair, and it's a pretty wet structure, so generally I do want to bet. A lot of times I'd be betting pot, but because I actually want him to call a lot, I'll be betting half pot. So with some pots on my range, I can bet half pot. But with like just 1 pair hands, I'd usually be potting it, and most of my draws potting it. And I might just bet half pot with like king high, or sometimes just intending to go to showdown afterwards. It just, he's way overfolding to floats so far. So considering that, like, it looks better to like bet with most of our range, considering how much he's folding to floats. He shouldn't be folding to floats so much. That will make me way over like float bet him, but not too worried about that. Yeah, checking the bottom pair. And with 3-8 I would just check it down. Okay, maybe I'm trying to get value from queen or 10 high and just avoid a river bet. Yeah, sometimes I do that. It's cool. If you don't think they're aggressive and you don't want to face a bet on the river. Yeah, and the reason I didn't ISO preflop is because he is not limp folding preflop. So same situation, not ISOing because he's not limp folding. And this is a wet board. I'm gonna check. And also we saw in the previous hand he played the same way and he had nothing. So if he has something, I expect him to delay, and if he doesn't, then I can like try and take it away from him on the turn by betting and just barreling probably any river. Yeah, again, limp folding, so let's just ISO. Okay, so Acro and Tull is a reg. He's not got too high of a VPIP, so there's no reason to do anything with this hand, especially so deep. Just checking, calling the flop. And when he's barreling, he does tend to barrel at a relatively high frequency. But actually not so much here in position, not so much here. It's actually a pretty low frequency overall. So it makes me want to like fold a bit more. He's also got some draws in. We're not doing too great against that. So I'm totally cool just folding. I'm just ISOing a ton against this guy, right? Yeah. Just ISO. Got me. Standard fish, just ISO. And here I got 2 overcards, but again, it's like one of these wet boards that I don't want to play. I think here with 2 overs, I'm more comfortable checking. Or I can just bet. Like, this is almost kind of similar to the previous hand with 3-5, where I had a gut shot. Because I still have about the same amount of equity probably, because I still, or maybe even more, because like I have 2 overs, I've got like 6 outs if he has a pair. So actually it's around the same amount of equity, and there might be just enough fold equity here. Like for sure if the 2 was not so low, if it was at least a 4, I'd be checking almost always. But when the 2 is the 2, he shouldn't have too many like 5-4, 5-3, so it's not the worst spot to bet. Yeah, this is where it gets sticky. But if I bet the flop with this, a lot of times I can just intend to go to showdown. Okay, maybe I just call to see what he had, but you shouldn't be doing this. Like, if you play solid, you just fold in general. Okay, so this guy, also another thing, again, I 3x, like sometimes I have some value hands, but I like just want to build a pot because I don't think they're limp folding enough. So if I feel like I'm playing against the type of fish who's not limp folding, then when I have value, I might just increase my sizing more. Just to build a pot pre-flop, basically. And we hit top pair, and now we can easily bet like 45 to get... Yeah, we want to get as much action as possible, but he just folds. Okay, shove. Yep, just ISOing non all in. So against fishes, a lot of times you might see me actually 3xing because I feel like they react almost similarly to the sizings sometimes. Okay. G Davies, this guy's a pretty passive rag. So definitely a lot of times I am ISOing, and for sure I should ISO a lot more frequently against him. So I would ISO most of the time here. Probably it's a good idea if I ISO'd more against him. And just going to, like, I can't really bluff on the ace, but what I could try is I could try bluffing the 10, especially with the jack, because like I might have some queen jack or jack 7 or something sometimes, and I want to fold out a queen high and king high, and like a lot of times I'll just be completely giving up, but I think this is, if I have a blocker to a straight, that's a good time to like just try and take the pot. But if I had like, let's say 2-3 offsuit or like some 5 high, I'd usually just give up, probably. Okay, just ISOing on all in. Yeah, so not ISOing enough against G Davies, but it's also like I don't even have to ISO too much because he's not like c-betting too much. He's basically like pretty easy to play post flop. So if he's easy to play post flop, I can check more as well. So you can balance it in that way. Checking twice, I'm basically just balancing my range here, because I know that I'd be checking most of my air here. So if I'm checking most of my air, I can check my jack here, because I know I'm not worried about much basically with this jack, except a king or queen, which isn't many cards, and just calling if he bets. Also, like, it allows me to, in the rare situation that he does have an ace, it allows me to keep the pot small and lose less of my stack, or at least put myself in less of a tough situation if he like check raises the turn or something, because he might very occasionally do something like that.
And would you bet like 45 or pot on the river if you check?
Probably, I don't know, it probably depends on my randomizer, to be honest. Like, I might use anything between 30 to 60. And that would depend on my randomizer, because I don't really, I'd probably use all the sizings with a jack. Bet, call, call, shove. Well, that was easy. Okay, this guy is some kind of ragfish player, but he plays hundreds a lot. From three-way, he's not too bad. From heads up, I think he's got some huge leaks. Anyways, just checking my second pair bottom kicker. And now we can definitely start betting on the turn for value. But he check raises, and I like to be solid. He might, even if he's bluffing, like, I don't want to like risk my stack here, and there's a lot of rivers I have to fold on no matter what, like, so I don't want to like call and then fold most rivers. Reg checking 7 deuce.
Could you back with two hands? I have a question about the turn play, and I was muted when I asked it. actually. Do you check the turn sometimes, despite the board being so wet? Or like,
Uh, yeah, I think GTO would be checking
I
sometimes.
think with the bottom kickers, it could be like decent play.
I think GTO is checking most of the time, actually. Not even sometimes. Probably like 80% of the time. But the population is not playing like GTO. Like the population would be betting most better hands, and they wouldn't be having a very much of a check raising range on the turn. So because of that, like it's probably best to just bet almost all your jacks here. And maybe against some good regs, I'd be checking a lot, but against this guy, I think I'd bet every time, basically.
Okay, cool.
Okay, not much info, but he's playing a wide VPIP. Jamming's okay. Let's. Oh, genial. Check, check. Total trash. It's okay to sometimes check this back. Probably most of the time, given his low VPIP. I don't want to be ISOing too wide. And can't do much on this flop, unfortunately. Again, this guy's VPIP isn't too high, and so I don't want to be ISOing too wide. 9 is one of the best combos to be bluffing. He's also folding to floats a lot, so that's a good situation. And I hit my gut shot. So he's the one who's got all the aces in his range, so I'd rather like check. Not that that really matters, but like it's hard to get 2 streets of value anyways if he has one pair. So I'd rather just try and get 1 street of value in most times and make sure not to get trapped by an ace. He checks twice, so I'm pretty confident just potting and he folds. It's also like kind of tricky way to play. Here ISOing, I probably shouldn't do it almost ever with this hand, especially against his low VPIP. Yeah, I don't like this too much. Let's see if we are ISOing. Yeah, Jack 7 suited, never ISOing. Like, don't ISO these like strong suited hands almost ever. Like, this is a mistake. Trying to ISO these strong suited hands because they just play well post flop. They've got good high card value in general. And you can continue on most flops. Like these are the best hands to check back almost always. Not ISOing, not limp folding, he's not c-betting, and he's folding to floats. So yeah. I thought he's some kind of fish, so I mean he's a reg, but really bad, so he might still limp fold on this board. But once he calls, I think I just give up. And if he bets the river, I should probably. I mean, he might have just called with like some random hand. It's probably okay to call, but I mean, you know, they don't usually play like this with air. So, yeah, probably I should fold the river actually. Okay. It's ace high. We got a good flush draw. I'm ready to bet, get it in. Okay. I can sometimes ISO this against him, but nothing wrong checking. And easily just call. and like this is a spot where I'm usually betting. He's not gonna check raise bluff much, and also like I can have every single 8, I can have every 7, and like I can play draws like this as well. You might also have some ace X. That's a great river. Okay, and yeah, the whole point of the turn bet was just like to like value bet against some non-believing hands, and also he still has to check call if he has some type of draws, or just deny equity. Like he has to check fold a bunch of hands as well, and if we can just do this with most of our range basically on the turn, and definitely with a 7. And here I decided to ISO because I have to ISO sometimes with this hand, and just bet 40. And when I hit my 5, I can just check it down. ISO, and we've got a gut shot, so we can just bet 40. Yeah, totally cool. Okay.
And in the previous spot, do you barrel over there? Like
No.
we are booking draws, so no.
No, I just give up, go to showdown with queen high. And this guy's some kind of reg, but he's limp folding a lot, and so yeah, this should be totally cool to sometimes be ISOing, especially when he's limp c-betting too much. He's also folding to floats too much. Like if you see someone is folding to floats too net hole, sorry. If you see someone with these stats, they limp c-bet a lot, or they c-bet a lot, it means that they put a good chunk of their trash into the c-betting range. So it means you should actually raise a ton, especially in limped pots, because in limped pots their range is generally a lot weaker, or at least a lot more polarized, and so they shouldn't be hitting a lot of medium or low boards as hard as us, and so we can really attack a ton against the c-bets, especially limp c-bets. We can like raise quite a lot or float quite a lot, and because they just over c-bet on those wetter, more connected boards quite often. Okay, let's do like a couple more hands. So here he's limp c-betting, but we've got mid pair, so perfect hand to just call. And I can easily call twice against this player because his strategy is to barrel 100% on the turn, 4 out of 4, and 2 out of 2, and then 0 out of 1 and 0 out of 3 on the river. So like I can easily call here, and I'd fold if he barreled because he's not barreling, but like he just checks. Okay. And we've been going for over an hour, so I think we can end the coaching here. Is that cool?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot.
Alright. Do you have any like questions or summary or comments about this session?
Not really.
Nope.
Okay. Glad to hear everything's clear. So I hope it was useful for you.